Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to see so many of you here. My name is Andrew Lamb, and I am the chair of the Internet of Production Alliance. That is, I'm your host for today. I'm not your trainer. But I'm hosting and facilitating, and we'll do some introductions shortly. I'll go through some of the logos that you're seeing on this slide. But this today is part one of recognizing green skills in makerspaces across Africa. And part one is today. It's a 2-hour session with a break in about an hour's time. And part two is on Thursday. And you should have all had calendar invitations for part two sent to you already. There is an optional drop-in session, and we'll come to that at the end of today. Delighted to be here. It's been a very interesting convergence that has brought today together, and I'll be speaking about that in a moment. So I want to welcome you. I want to say the sessions are recorded. I'll be pretty hot on the microphone. So I'd be, and I might at some point ask you to use your video and use the chat and so on. If we get to it today, we might use breakout rooms, things like that. But otherwise it's going to be quite an exciting opportunity to learn about digital badges. So thank you all for coming. I want to start by introducing ourselves, and I'd like to start by introducing our lead facilitator and trainer today, Don Presant from Learning Agents, which is a company in Canada. I have wanted to work with Don for at least a decade, and I am delighted that today we finally have the opportunity to start working together. He's been an innovator in flexible recognition for the last 25 years. And he's an advocate for life-wide recognition, lifelong learning. He's a consultant on digital credentialing, working with some of the most active and leading institutions and organizations that are adopting this very powerful technology that we're going to be talking to you about today. And he also provides some of the infrastructures and services that are needed. You can find out more about Don through his badge portfolio. There's a link there, and this information is also on the webinar webpage for when you registered for the webinar. So I'm also delighted that we have Catherine from Kenya, who is a specialist in RPL, recognizing prior learning. And Catherine and I met and immediately realized the potential of what Don is doing, particularly if it can be associated with formal skills assessments or government recognized schemes. And these are areas that Catherine has a lot of experience with in Kenya. Her organization is called Her Crown, and her work bridges informal experience with formal credentials. It's about boosting employability. It's about professional dignity. But then it's also on the speaking to some of Catherine's skills around gender and inclusion. It's also about power, equity, and social inclusion, particularly for those in undervalued roles. And the undervalued roles are different to informal roles, but they're often they often coincide. For myself, I am here today as your host and facilitator. I'm a systems engineer that I've been working in international development and disaster relief for about about 20 years. The original work, my career started really with around engineering education reform in the UK, trying to bring more international development and disaster relief into engineering courses in the UK. So I'm somewhat familiar with the challenges of recognizing skills that perhaps are otherwise hard to assess. And I'm now interested through the Internet of Production Alliance on enabling distributed manufacturing. That relates directly to what we're trying to do today. And I'll give some examples of how that might be relevant in the future. But a quick example would be, how do you know in a certain place who is able to make things? And my hope is that digital badges are part of the solution. Through the Make project, and a number of people on the call today were involved in the Make project, which is about African and European makerspace ecosystems. We were able to develop a maker passport system. And so perhaps these digital badges will interface with that. I'm the board chair of Fab Lab Winam in Kenya, and I'm also a co-founder and advisor to Makerspaces Africa. So delighted to be here today. I also want to recognize two organizations that have helped us get here in particular in reaching out to makerspace networks across Africa. I want to recognize Makerspaces Africa, which is a new association recently registered in South Africa, to help build the makerspace movement across the entire continent. And at the moment, its main activity is fundraising, but also joint fundraising efforts, but also webinars and sharing knowledge. And there may be an in-person event coming up later this year. Its web address is there, and I'll tell you about the this week's webinar at the end of the call. And then also the United Nations Development Programme's Timbuktu program, which is an incredible Africa-wide innovation program. They have created a family of university innovation pods that have makerspaces as part of them. I am really very grateful to Gift from the Timbuktu program for all of his effort in reaching out to Unipod makerspaces, many of whom are able to attend today. And I'm very grateful also to the UK's Royal Academy of Engineering, which is providing some of the funding for today. The Royal Academy of Engineering is a UK peak body for representing the engineering profession. And this program today is part of their Frontiers program. I'm also delighted that we are meeting today on something that the Royal Academy is very interested and engaged in, the International Women in Engineering Day. So for the women on the call today, in particular, that for all of us, we are delighted that we can associate our workshop today with this celebration of women in engineering around the world. The workshops have emerged today as a convergence of opportunity. There is an incredible need across many African countries, but around the world in general, to transition to a sustainable future. And the problem is that we don't necessarily have the capacity in the formal education systems in Africa and around the world to meet the scale of that challenge, of the skills gap. So one of the things we're trying to do is look at green skills today. And this is the beginning of a wider journey for Unipods, for Makerspaces Africa, for adopting digital badges and beginning to recognize and share digital badges. so that not only green skills, but all sorts of maker and designer and innovation skills can be recognized and shared across the whole continent. But the kind of green skills we think, when I think about green skills, I think about e-mobility solutions, I think about solar energy or solar water heating, I think about plastic recycling or general waste recycling, activities like permaculture, processing e-waste, energy efficiency solutions, eco-design skills, and lots more. I'm sure that many of you have participated in something that you will consider a green skill. And we will talk about some of those as we begin to co-create badges towards the end of this session in the coming days. Another opportunity is open recognition, and I'm going to leave Don to talk about that at some length today, because it's an incredibly exciting technology that is enabled by the internet. And it has all sorts of values about verification and transparency and being able to work at very different levels of experience and different scales, different levels of formality as well. So I think it's a really exciting thing, but I'm going to let Don talk about that. It's why we're here today. And then makerspaces are also an opportunity. I see makerspaces as being local hubs for learning, for earning, for technology, for repair and maintenance, for prototyping, for innovation, and for regeneration. So we are bringing these three fields, green skills, open recognition, makerspaces, together today. The other reason we're here today is because earlier in the year, in February, the Royal Academy of Engineering convened, along with its partners at the United Nations Environment Programme and the Royal Society and Jacob's Ladder, a range of organizations, a symposium on how do we solve the problem of the transition through green skills. It wasn't Africa focused, it was held in Africa, but there were people from countries all over the world. And Don, Catherine, and I met at that event, and we also were able to work with Gift from the Unipod network and representatives from Makerspaces in Kenya and around the world. On that QR code in front of you is the final report for that workshop. So you can look at that to get a better sense of what was discussed and what we're talking about. It's a very, very long web link, but there's the front cover. You can take a photo and find out more. The other reason we're here, I want to talk about the project. These workshops are the beginning of a longer project that the partner organizations, Don, Catherine, and I are working on to co-develop a green skills framework for makerspace managers, covering things like repair, recycling, eco-design, energy efficiency, and much more. At the very minimum, we hope to create 5 digital badges that will allow makerspace managers to showcase their green skills publicly and showcase the skills of their makers publicly, and to promote recognition across the sector. The idea is that this is the beginning of a wider certification and maker passport program that's to be hosted by and recognized by the African Makerspaces Association and other actors across the formal education system perhaps as well. So this is the beginning of a longer project. I want to give you a couple of examples so we know what we're talking about. One example could be, let's say, last year, a makerspace manager in Botswana ran a training on how to repurpose old car batteries for use in solar panel systems. Now, at the end of that training, they might have printed out a certificate, but there are all sorts of problems with printed certificates. They're quite easy to make now. They're quite easy to fake now. What that Makerspace manager could now do is to recognize that prior learning by issuing a digital badge to the makers, the people who were trained in that program, to show that they actually attended that training. And maybe, not in Botswana, but maybe in Guinea-Bissau or in Mali or in Egypt, there is someone who has done similar training. And we can look at that badge and work out, can that be a shared badge? And if it is, the more people recognize it, the more powerful that badge can become. And it begins to fill a gap in formal recognition systems for technologies like that. Another example might be that perhaps a local clinic in Nigeria wants some help trying to find someone to maintain its solar panels. Who does it ask? And often, if the skills are available, they might be available only in the capital city or only to do installations but not maintenance. There may be all sorts of barriers to finding these skills locally. So they could begin to see, using digital badging systems and platforms, who has had training, but also perhaps level 1, level 2, level 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years worth of experience in solar panel maintenance using digital badges. They will have trust in those badges because they can be verified. They can contact the individuals who have those badges and then hire them to come and do that work. So these badges are also a window into potential livelihoods and contracts. So that's a little bit of an introduction about us and why we're here. Can I ask you all now to put into the chat 4 things so that you can introduce yourselves to each other a little bit and you get a sense of who is here. Please could you put your name, your gender, and on the International Women in Engineering Day, that's very important to us, your makerspace and your country. So please fire up the chat and we'll take a few minutes now for everyone to put their name, their gender, their makerspace, and their country in the chat. Is everyone able to access the chat? Thanks, Mike from Kenya. Welcome. Iomi254 is a very impressive makerspace supported by the Kenyan Red Cross. You're very welcome. Hi, Fred from Fab Lab Rwanda. Molly Mohi, I think you might be the first person from Lesotho ever to attend a workshop that I have run and a workshop run by the Internet of Production. So I'm delighted to welcome you. Nile University Fab Lab. Welcome, Abdul Hamid. Delighted to see you. The Higher Education Institute. Welcome, Ponchang. Hello, Chris. Greetings, Dennis from Rwanda. Matthew Labari. Matthew does really exciting work working in South Sudan and in the refugee settlements in northern Uganda doing repair, maintenance and training. We also have Fazili from the InZone, which is in the Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya. Very, very welcome. This is great to see so many people. We have Tamsanka from Bulawayo, I think, the rig makerspace in Zimbabwe. Welcome, Adebayo, from Nile University Fab Lab. We have more people. Welcome, Wilson, from Fab Lab Rwanda. More people from Fab Lab Rwanda. This is fantastic. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Keep it coming. In fact, today we had registrations from all across the African continent. We had, I think, 14 countries represented. Welcome, Daoud, from Kumasi in Ghana. It's nice to see you again. Delighted that you can join us. So we have people from all across the continent. I think that's a really exciting moment to celebrate. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Don, who can lead us through the workshop. Don, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to share now and see how that works. Let me know if that's coming through. Everybody can hear me clearly?
It is, yeah. We can see the
great.
PowerPoint on the first slide, not full screen.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Now
perfect.
Oh, good. So thank you, Andrew, for that very generous introduction. The name of my company is Learning Agents, and that's a bit of a theme for me. Our informal strapline is that we may not be smart, but we're learning. So I figure it's a good sort of lifelong learning metaphor. And one of the things I've started doing is giving people sort of a bit of a biography of me, because I like to say that digital badges are about making recognition visible. So this is basically a little sort of life journey starting from around the year 2000 that I'll just sort of tell you how I got here today. I used to be with TV Ontario. I like to say I dragged them kicking and screaming onto the internet in the early 90s when I was normally a grumpy video editor. So they are the educational communications authority for Ontario, a bit like BBC in a minor way. We actually had a lot of BBC people, former BBC people there. Anyway, dragged them onto the internet, and ended up leaving around 2000 to set up Learning Agents as an ed tech consultancy. I went to the middle of Canada, Manitoba, Winnipeg, Red River College, and Winnipeg is where I'm still based because I met my wife there. And since then, we've focused on career journeys, lifelong learning, the recognition of life-wide learning, first with e-portfolios and then with digital badges starting around 2011 and micro-credentials. And along with the advocacy and consulting, where Andrew's explained I have three hats. I basically advocate for opening up recognition. I consult on recognition systems and have some education technology services around that. The CanCred and now CanSkills is the sort of hub of the educational technology services. And these are some of the organizations we've been working with over the years, different capacities, sometimes technology, sometimes consulting. More recently, we've been we have been working over the decades with the Open Recognition Alliance, which is the sort of organization behind the event where I first met Andrew. I believe it was in Lille, Andrew. And then we have some technology partnerships, in this case with Edelex and SkillsAware around new ways to recognize skills and accelerate that process. As I like to say, we drink our own champagne. So I do have a badge-based e-portfolio, which Andrew has given you a link to. And I'm also a so-called open recognition ambassador, and that's actually linked to the portfolio. And it's a way of keeping the badge alive because I maintain the portfolio with events and activities. Such as today, for example, I'll probably end up having a link in the badge portfolio today. So basically, it's about supporting what I would call life-wide recognition or sometimes just open recognition. So recognition. Why would we want to be recognized? Well, Andrew's talked about a couple of examples around that. Recognition or prior learning typically is formal recognition, which could be of formal learning, so transfer of credit, but it could also be of prior experiential learning, sometimes called APEL, or what is it, accreditation of prior experiential learning. But that's not the only kind of recognition that could be important. It's not like the other types don't exist. So, for example, in workplaces or in regions, you could have recognition that's good enough for the purpose, good enough for the context to support things like career advancement, professional development. So, for example, in a community of practice, like what I'm understanding, I'm hearing about the makerspaces across Africa. Those are communities of practice, people helping each other learn, people bringing new knowledge, people becoming acclimatized to the knowledge and sort of becoming activated in the whole process of making. And then in personal life, perhaps in the community of practice, but perhaps also in your local community. It's nice to be recognized. It's good to be recognized. And sometimes it's very important personally to be recognized, even before achievement, to be recognized as a person, as a worthwhile human being. And then that can open many doors in terms of activation of feeling empowered, feeling effectual in situations. So that's why we talk about identity development and acceptance and empowerment. So all these types of ways of being recognized, the point I'm making here is that formal recognition is not the only thing, and sometimes it might not be the most relevant thing in a particular situation. So the other thing I'd like to say, and I probably don't have to say this too much with people working in makerspaces, is that most of the learning we do is not organized. It's not structured. It's essentially takes place working with others. It takes place as we're solving problems, etc. And that deserves to be recognized. Um, this is originally Miller's pyramid is something that was originally developed for doctors because you really want to know that a doctor knows what they're doing before they start opening you up to do things. So basically, they talk about the different levels of knowledge, the different levels of competency, and so very often, people think, oh, people need skills. We must give them a training course. So we'll dump all this information on them and maybe they can answer a multiple choice question about the knowledge they were just told. But what does that tell you? So maybe your multiple choice questions or where you ask people to reflect on what you've just told them, or the distractors in your multiple choice questions are really good so people can reason based on what you've told them. So that gets into the knows how. So in other words, I can explain how a makerspace works based on what you've told me. But I think what's more important for a lot of people is the idea of demonstrating what you know and can do. And for doctors, they have something called, I think it's OSCE, the Objective Structured Clinical Examination, where they'll have fake patients who have symptoms and you have to basically work through it. And sometimes that's with mannequins and things like that as well. Or could just be a virtual simulation and people are making decisions and you basically are able to see that. I think that's good, but you can prepare for those things and then there can be a bit of a drop off from that. So where the gold standard is can a person be relied on to do something day in, day out, maybe after a 12-hour shift, maybe after a 16-hour shift? Are they able to diagnose? Are they able to problem solve, etc.? So that's performance integrated into practice. So just to say that knowledge, skills, and attitudes are embedded throughout that, but a lot of it relates to trusting that people can do something consistently rather than they can fulfill a particular assessment. So it's more like an extended assessment. Is this person reliable? And actually in Canada right now, where there's a reputation for immigrants coming and not being recognized for what they know and can do, this form of extended observation is increasingly being used for internationally trained doctors, where they'll come and do a residency for 6 to 8 weeks, working with another doctor who observes them and can then later sign off on all the skills they have, the clinical skills, the ability to work with patients, etc. Now, who can recognize? And again, this relates to different types of recognition, different types of formality of recognition. Normally, when people think about RPL, for example, it's about authorities. So this could be an awarding body such as city and guilds, for example, but it could be a college, university, trade school, etc. These people say this person met the criteria. We have a quality system in place, and we say this person has met these outcomes. That's one thing. However, you could also have, even beyond education, you have professional bodies, industry bodies, and people who, I would call this edging into semi-formal recognition, where you would have, say, an independent trainer who has a curriculum and maybe even have some form of accreditation and be delivering this, but it wouldn't be for credit, for example. And then product and service producers. So if you produce a certain piece of equipment, it's good to have your suppliers up to a certain level so they can supply you reliably, and it's good to have your customers up to a certain level so they can use your equipment safely. So a number of manufacturers have training that relates to that kind of thing, and they can sort of mildly certify the people as being ready for those types of things. Beyond that, we have, I think, probably the hub of what we're talking about now, communities of practice, community-based organizations, nonprofits and charities, people who are wanting to have recognition that is good enough for their purpose, good enough for their community, and that may be able to grow over time into other forms of recognition. And but that's still sort of organizational, it's still social. We also have the interpersonal. This is, I saw you do that. That was awesome. I see you. Thank you for helping me. Will you please be my mentor? Or I saw you do that. I don't think you give yourself enough credit. I'm going to recognize you. Or nobody's recognizing me, so I'm going to make a claim, and then I'm going to look for support for that claim. But by basically providing evidence and seeking endorsement from others about my claim, because nobody gave me a badge for this. So all of these use cases are valid in an open recognition universe. And by open recognition, we don't mean anybody, anything. It's like a little sort of toy in a package of candy. It's that it should be flexible and should be able to start in one place. It could be informal and maybe develop formality if that's appropriate, or something that could start with highly formal. So in other words, say a health license to operate as a health professional, but the ability to work with certain populations, for example, as a semi-formal or an informal addition to that. So for example, in Canada, we have Indigenous communities. So we have health professionals who go to Indigenous communities, and it's like they're sort of dropping in like paratroopers, and people don't, the local community, they don't engage properly with the local community. So having skills to engage with the community, to understand where communities are coming from, though that's the kind of recognition that could be really useful in certain contexts, and it's not necessarily formal. Is this going okay for pace, Andrew? Is that working?
You're doing well. Thanks, Don.
Okay, good. So I'm going to talk now about digital badges. And what I like to call them is they're essentially flexible, portable containers for recognition. It's just, a large extent, they've actually inspired a lot of the thinking around open recognition that I get involved in internationally over the last, I would say, 15 years. So I like to call them documents dressed up as pretty pictures, because they're portable documentation of learning achievements that have embedded so-called metadata or content that talks about how they're earned, and I'll show you more about that. It's in a standardized format. It's a standard that was developed by Mozilla back in 2011, Mozilla Foundation, as a way to make making learning and recognition of learning more portable. And the idea was working in the community, working at the school, etc. So it was used for projects back then, things like Chicago City of Learning. So keeping underserved populations engaged in the notion of learning through the summer, when you would normally have a drop off in terms of people going, in terms of people's learning engagement over the summer. You get them involved in projects where they're learning, they're doing things, they're making music, they're getting involved in community activities, possibly makerspaces. Actually, that did include makerspaces, and recognizing them for that and making them feel valuable and engaged. So here is a bit of this is more Open Badges version 2, but it gives you a good idea about it. We're now on version 3. So it's got these fields. It's a structured document. It's got these fields, and on the left you have the fields that have to have something in order for the badge to be legal or aligned to the standard. But the actual content is still, a lot of it is up to the person who's the organization or person who's creating it. Over on the right, you would have fields that might be relevant or not. So maybe you want an expiry date for something that's to do with health and safety, and maybe that's appropriate. Or some kind of certification, professional certification, where actual currency of learning, how current your learning is important. Maybe evidence, direct evidence is important. Maybe it's enough to say that, I gave them this badge and you can trust us because of these other reasons. Maybe it's aligned to a competency framework. And so I'm going to mention a couple of those later. So there's Green Comp and DigComp and EntreComp, for example, out of Europe, the European community. Maybe there's an endorsement. Maybe it's a third party that says this is really good because these people come to us and they go to the head of the line when we're hiring, something like that. Language, you could have multiple languages. I notice I don't have a good slide about that right now, but you can have a badge that would say open in a default language, and then you'd be able to switch to another one. So from English, for example, it could open up and go to French or Kiswahili or something like that. And then tags, those are essentially just quick ways of providing both humans and machines a quick idea of what the badge is about. So as I mentioned, it's Open Badges 3.0, which actually brings along some other affordances, some of which may be relevant for what we're talking about. But essentially that's it. So in other words, you can deliver somebody a badge, they can share it to a site like LinkedIn or maintain a badge portfolio or badge wallet and start collecting these skills. And this has been explored a little bit in Africa through projects such as Atingi, HPAS, and I believe the United Nations, various United Nations organizations have been involved in them. For example, ITC ILO. So if you do it right, you can recognize somebody in one place and they can potentially take it and be recognized in another spot. And I've tried to provide some examples of makerspace type badges here. There's one of them, and it's actually, which one? Oh yeah, the Arduino one is actually from Canada. University of Victoria has a library system, has sort of a makerspace setup. So Arduino, I think, is something to do with electronics, if I'm not wrong. But a number of other ones, and including things like the Linux Foundation and the idea of open source and using GitHub, for example. Agile pathways, you're making learning visible. You could sort of show a progression of badges that you've been earning, perhaps that are leading to an ultimate goal, sort of a master certificate, if you wish. And you're providing branding. So when a person shares a badge, they're not only sharing what they know and can do, they're sharing who helped them there. So it could be your makerspace ends up with a bigger digital footprint when your makers end up sharing their badges socially. And in terms of quality and verification, I like to say that quality is about fitness for purpose. So in other words, it doesn't have to have a psychometric multiple choice assessment in order to be a valuable badge. What it does have to have is transparency to say that this person achieved this, and this is how we decided to award the badge, and be consistent with that, follow through on that. So perhaps it's a certification. I'm going to show you these examples, but perhaps it's a certification, perhaps it's a so-called micro-credential, which is, I just call them formal badges mostly, because there's assessment involved and some sort of transparent quality system. But it could also be engagement in an event. So for example, today, you're going to have an opportunity to earn a badge, and it will be a useful signal to people, but it won't be a formal micro-credential. So this is where I sometimes explode people's brains with too many examples. I have a reputation. I should have a badge for complex slides. But essentially, we have, over the years, we have sort of observed practice and actually done a fair amount of research based on standards for certification, standards for certificates, learning certificates, etc. And so we've developed a spectrum of recognition that has examples that can be used as a menu supporting badge templates that we supply to people to get started. And what we say is there's a spectrum from formal to non or semi-formal. I'm increasingly using the term semi-formal because it's, what's the word? It's usefully vague because it's between formal and informal, and non-formal can have a certain amount of baggage in terms of conflicting meanings in different communities. And semi-formal, as I say, is usefully vague, as in there might be aspects that are formal, might be aspects that are non-formal within that. So semi-formal is just a useful term for in the middle. So you'd have formal badges on the left that would include micro-credentials, but could also include professional certifications. And over on the right, you would have non-formal. There's typically no summative assessment. And by summative assessment, that's a sort of a nerdy educator term. It means somebody can fail to get it. In other words, it's summative. Did you meet the outcomes that we had in mind for you, or not? And so that's the assessment order, I like to say. And here is the sort of spectrum, and Andrew was featuring, I think, this in his opening slide. See, the idea here is you'd have professional certification, you'd have micro-credentials on the left, and then over on the right, you would have organized learning that could be a workshop like today, a webinar, or thank you for your service to the community, thank you for being a mentor, that kind of thing. And I'm just going to provide you with, this is where typically heads explode a bit, but I find it useful to show people all the examples so they can say, oh, we do mentoring, or oh, I see there's self-paced course completion. That's where we're starting. We'll do that. Community awards, we do that. Maybe we can have a badge for that. So the point I would make here in the middle is there is assessment, and I think this is interesting for makerspaces, and you might have more actual use cases in here that I would be interested in hearing about. But basically, it's about doing things. It's about applying learning you might have. It's about being shown how to do things. It's about performing over time. And there are ways of recognizing that using some of the tools we have within the system. So you can assemble a body of evidence and say, I think I meet these outcomes. Do you agree? And somebody would get that. Or you would be working on, remember I mentioned the internationally trained doctors, you could be able to be recognized as a leader because not only did you learn how to be a leader, but you actually acted as a leader over a course of, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months. And so you have that kind of recognition as a leader. The other thing I would say along the bottom, I've recently reintroduced this. It's the notion of the learning organization. What if you have a skill and you can't apply it back in your workplace because your organization can't handle what it is you have to offer? So the organizations need, I want to say organizations are people too, and they're not, but organizations need to learn too. So that's essentially what change management is. and organizations also help certain things. So you could have what's called corporate social responsibility, or CSR, or you could have just simply like a test like what is it, B Corp, B Corporation, where people say, we support these values, we've been set up along these values. And actually back here in Canada, we have charities which are peer awarded certification, accreditation of the organization. So a subset of the organizations agree to evaluate evidence packages provided by organizations that want to be recognized. And that may be a model you might want to consider for your community. And the other one I would just say here is workplace improvement. I don't know how much you know about lean manufacturing, the Toyota production system, but they have something they call a Kaizen Blitz, which is sort of an American take on the Japanese system. But essentially, they'll identify an issue in the workplace where there's waste and they want to do process improvement. And they'll set up a Kaizen Blitz where they'll recruit people to solve the problem and then document that solution. And that's a learning process, both for the organization and for the individuals involved, and it deserves to be recognized. So that's why I have workplace improvement straddling that line. It's an example of something they call in Australia work applied learning, as opposed to just work-based learning. So any questions briefly before I head on from that? Because it is a lot to have in in a slide.
If there are any questions, you can raise your hand now, and I'll help you unmute your microphone and so on. Or you can use the question and answer section or the chat. But I just want to really say, I mean, I think this particular slide is what convinced me, and my sort of 10 years of working with Makerspaces, that this is something, this technology of open recognition and digital badges is something that could be really valuable to people like me, to people like you. And, you know, that central column that Don has highlighted with evidence and demonstration, application and performance. That's a really powerful column, I think. And yeah, the work experience, work history, performance in a role, those are things that if you apply that to a maker, you begin to understand the quality of that work if you are going to hire that maker to make something for you. You know, you often get better results if you hire someone who has 5 years of experience using 3D printers than someone who has 5 days worth of experience using 3D printers. So this can all be represented in these badges. What we're concentrating on in this workshop is green skills for makerspace managers. But I would like to encourage you to, if you would like to sort of have a Makerspaces Africa recognized badge for volunteer appreciation, which is the top example on the flexible recognition column that you can see on the right there, or some kind of community award, then it is the kind of thing that Makerspaces Africa and the Unipod system could engage in. We do have a question from Matthew, Don, about whether the slides are going to be able to be shared afterwards.
Yes, if you, I didn't really discuss this with Andrew. Normally what I do in this kind of situation is give you an opportunity to apply for a badge for participating in this process. And if you do that and you reflect on what have I learned today, how might I apply this in my work, and what would I like to see in the future, or how could this be improved? If you just provide that sort of simple reflection, we'll issue you a badge with an embedded link to the thing. So basically, it's an ongoing learning capsule for you to what was discussed on the day and what did you think about it on the day. So yes, if you're prepared to apply for the badge.
And I'm sorry I might have given the game away a little bit there, Don, that badges will be issued for this workshop, and that's how you get the workshop materials. So yes, Matthew will be shared, and the recording will also be shared by Makerspaces Africa and Internet of Production as well. Is this a good point, Don, for us to take a quick break, or do you want to cover some more slides before the break?
I just realized that I haven't shown how the stacked layer, and I also want to show how to make recognition more formal very quickly, and then I think
let's do that. So another 10 minutes. We started a few minutes late, so let's do another 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes or so, and then when it's a good place to take a break, we'll do so. Thanks, Don. Back to you.
Okay, great. So just to show that couple of things. There are characteristics that go across the spectrum. These aren't meant to be silos. So often you might have, say, an application of learning coming out of a workshop, or you would have something that begins as a self-assertion but would have evidence in it. So that's one point to make with those sort of dotted line arrows. At the top, you can stack these things. You can cluster badges into sort of a cluster of learning, or set up sequential learning pathways, etc. And those also can be formal or non-formal. So recommended pathways versus you must follow this to be certified by us, that kind of thing. The other thing I just want to show, and this is based on something I was sharing oh gosh. Okay. So this is another version of this that I did, and I want to make the point that I'm just going to blow this up a bit. Just down at the bottom end. So, sorry. So this part here. So in other words, these types of badges could be assessed or not assessed. They could be self-asserted. They could be just, thanks for being here. Here's whatever. Or they could be assessed, and that could make them micro-credentials. Okay. The other thing is to say is that something might start out being non-assessed, and then could be the curriculum behind it, the outcomes behind them, could be pre-assessed by an authority to say that if somebody comes to us with this badge, we've looked at it already, we've looked at some examples of the people who've been awarded it. So this has become so-called pre-assessed curriculum that would go into something like a credit bank. So there's some actual examples of this. Often institutions have their own internal credit bank, so they're not looking at the same curriculum over and over again. They think, okay, we looked at this last time, we'll just take it as a given this time. So, but there are also things underway, and I think in terms of what they call learning and employment record ecosystems, is to have to present your curriculum to a body or an organization that can decide to say, yes, this does meet the outcomes of this program, we will give advanced standing, etc. So I just want to make that point that something can start out without, as I say, a semi-formal thing in a sector or a community, but then be endorsed by an awarding body, and then actually have credit or more formal value as a result of that. So that's just quickly to say that. I was making that point last week. I think, yeah. And so it's just the point to make is micro-credential doesn't have to be the case. You could have other things that are perhaps more meaningful in your context because of the values that you hold in your community, that don't just have to be a micro-credential that would be issued by a university or a college or whatever. And I think that's good for me. I didn't need the 10 minutes. So maybe we can take a break now, Andrew.
Thank you very much. And just before we do that, let's, I think go to Martin Olo, who has just raised his hand there. Martin, do you want to unmute and ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We
Yes.
can hear you fine. Maybe you could introduce yourself very briefly, please.
Perfect. I'm Martin Olo, CEO of Hub Winam. And right now, I would like to thank the presenter for a good presentation. I only want to ask, are the budgets given against the training or against a certain period of experience? Thank you.
That's sure. That's a great question, and I would say both. It could be for training, and you could even combine them. So it could be for the initial training. It could be a subsequent one for showing how you applied that training. And then there could be a one beyond that to say you were working with that. And actually, maybe I've changed my mind. I'll just show you a couple more slides because I'm looking at this this one out of Makerspaces in France that I think is useful way to answer this question. Okay, so you could have an initial training.
So Don, sorry, I've kicked you off, I'm afraid, because I was just about to share a slide as well. So do you want to share your screen again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for the
So
great question, Martin.
Yeah. Sort of.
And I'm very excited that Don has an answer from the perspective of makerspaces specifically to your question.
So again, just for the initial response, it could be you did this training or these trainings, you applied this for a short period of time, you showed that you did something with it, and then maybe you did it over time, and the combination of those can give you that sort of stacked idea of a micro-credential. Remember, across the top, you could have a stacked micro-credential that could be a master certificate. So typically, I mean, you could have experience-only badges. So, for example, in Alberta, we are working with the government of Alberta. So students still in school who have 200 hours of working in a workplace that an employer signs off on. That's a useful signal that this person might be employable, that at least they show up for work and et cetera. So that's a potentially useful signal in itself. But typically you would combine it to say that I learned this, I did this, and I have been doing this for X amount of time, and that could be a combination. Or you could, and the badges alone can be meaningful as well. Does that help answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah. So the slide we're seeing is most micro credentials, education micro credentials, not so much sort of thing across the top. Did you want to show the Makerspace France slide? Or,
so this is what I call progression as activation in France. And this is developed by a makerspace called Le Dôme in Caen, Normandy. And they have come up, and it's actually spread beyond, and it's used as a menu for creating badges that reflect engagement and activation. So they have knowledge and skills on the left, and engagement and participation on the right. They're sort of deliberately avoiding levels of competence, but they love talking about levels of engagement. So you have knowledge, you have skill, know-how, attitudes, behaviors, and then potentially competency. And then experience, what, achievements with that, what you did with a group and community. And then they have these levels of engagement. So I just looking at it, I'm starting to commit myself. I'm now really sort of active. And then I'm really getting good at it. I'm starting to develop new stuff. And then I'm a leader in the space. So you end up having these badges that have distinctive shapes to them and that people have learned in the community actually means something. And and the whole idea here is that you're tracking, you're not judging people. It's a more social, more sort of very French in a way, way of looking at this sort of an engagement and what I like to call activation. So that's another type of framework that people use in France, that there's an element of competency in this, but it's not judging people. It's about appreciating levels of engagement, which, and you can again, you can mix and match with this. It's the idea of just thinking about badges as flexible containers for recognition that would be meaningful in a social connective context. So I think that's good time for a break now.
Thank you very much, and that's a great slide. You could see there that the levels progress, you know, based on the experience. We're going to take a 3-5 minute break now. So get some water, go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. But whilst you're taking the break, if you have recently joined the webinar, please feel free to, in the chat, put your name, your gender, your makerspace, and your country. And I see FabLab Winam has its video on here, so I can see that there are a number of people in the room just in that one FabLab. So if there are more than one people using your account to join the webinar today, please feel free to write everybody's names and introduce everyone. It'll be great for us to report back and to share in the future as we celebrate today the International Women in Engineering Day. We're just returning now. Welcome to quite a number of people from Nigeria here. We have Akeme from Abuja and the Nile University there, the Fab Lab coordinator there. It's good to meet you, Henry, from Made in Workshop in Johannesburg. You're very welcome. Dauda, it's good to be connected again, and grateful for your participation. I know you do a lot of work on a commercial basis, as well as doing education and training activities. So hopefully the technology of open recognition will be valuable to you. It's good to learn from Felix about generative CAD in Lagos, Nigeria. And we have Peng Chang from the University of Jos. Jos is an amazing city in Nigeria. Very, very glad that you can join us. And Dawood, thank you for sharing your link to your innovation center, Cosmos, in Ghana. That's a great one to learn about as well, the innovation center there. There's a lot of overlap between innovation centers and makerspaces all over the world, but particularly in African countries, and particularly in the unipods that are partnering with us on this project and this workshop today. Okay, so if we start coming back together again, I would actually like to invite everybody, if you are willing and able to do so, to turn your cameras on, please, so that we can do a group photo on at least a group screenshot, if not a photograph. So you're very welcome, please, to turn on your cameras. And I will very quickly, once everybody's, let me just open the program. Here we go. And it's nice to have so many views across Africa today. Professor Mambo, welcome. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Okay, is everybody able to
Thank you very much.
see each other? I'm going to do a group shot in 3, 2, 1. Let me try again. 3, 2, Thank you. And let me just do one more for luck. I know, thank you very much, everyone. This is great. Unfortunately, Neo is telling me that her camera doesn't work. So if somebody can search digital badges out there for someone who can repair laptop cameras, that would be very useful. But thank you for this. I'm going to stop sharing. If we can all switch the cameras off now, and we'll go back to you, Don, to take it away.
Great. Okay, so I'm sort of mixing and matching a bit between presentation decks, but I'll show you first this one, which I was looking at. I was quite interested when I was preparing for this presentation today. So this comes out of the Make project, which I think Andrew can probably tell you a lot more about than I, but I remember him mentioning it earlier in today's session. So this was work done looking at the Open Badges ecosystem in version 2. I think it was 2023 that this was developed, and it sort of shows you how you have badge issuers who develop different types of badges and issue those types of badges, so-called assertions, to individuals earners who have them, and hopefully can leverage them using host platforms for badges, such as there's one that for the badge you'll earn called Open Badge Passport, for example, that's also a displayer. And then people can actually verify the badge to say, okay, are you the person I think you are? And is the organization who issued this the one I think it is? So verifiable credential. And then it basically, hopefully, will help them open up new opportunities, which goes back to the original Mozilla vision of learning and learning mobility. And then down on the right, you have something that would be potential use case for issuing badges. But I think we're talking about different ways of doing that and combining those things. So not just one way of recognizing people for that. I mentioned the word ecosystem, and that kind of tweaked me to think about talking about, again, a presentation I was making for people in the States. There's quite a bit of work going on for what they call the learning and employment record ecosystem, where you would have badges that would be developed. And this kind of looks like a big circuit board. And it doesn't really work this way yet, but it's a vision for how standards can support moving towards that. So you would hopefully ending up with something called a talent marketplace. But in general, you have the suppliers of recognition based on assessment. They would plan, create, and issue credentials. You have the product, either the learner or earner, so they accept these recognitions of achievement and learning, and then hopefully they would be able to leverage them into new opportunities, as I'm showing here. Okay, so again, apologies for exploding your brains with too much information on one slide, but I thought it'd be useful in that context. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. I've been talking about badges in general. I'm now going to be talking about the platform, more about the platform that we are, sorry, on the right deck, the features of the platform that we're talking about that you would be able to use ongoing. This is a sort of a quick overview of the system. IOPA, Internet of Production Alliance, has its own environment on Open Badge Factory, and that's where it can develop a library of badges. You can issue these badges through a variety of means, and typically early days we're going to be issuing them manually, and manually based on these application forms for badges. I think I deserve this badge, and here's why. Badges are issued, and the ID that we're typically using now. This can change over time, but we're using an email address as ID. So you get mail notifications saying you have been issued this badge, please accept it. You go to the badge acceptance page and you decide, oh yes, I want to download it, or I want to share it directly to social media, or no, I want to build a free badge portfolio. And I was showing you examples of that. So that's what we'll be doing, is we'll be collaborating on developing badges in the library over here on the left, and coming up with criteria for issuing those badges. What does it take for us to want to award this badge to someone? And based on that, issue those badges to various people, either the leaders in the makerspaces or the participants in makerspaces, your makers in those spaces, and then recognize them there. And there is an element of, I think I've showed that. There is an element of, you can also have a PDF, and I'll show you examples of that. I've been talking about this. You can basically set up a learning pathway, or so-called milestone badge, that's based on earning other badges. In this case, it's a Polytechnic in Canada, and you have to earn all 5 of those in order to get the master credential. But it could just be 3 out of the 5, and it could be an elective milestone badge, and you can combine that with mandatory badges, so you can sort of embed these kinds of nested milestone pathways for a sort of a stacked layer, or layered stack, sorry. This is an example of a badge application, again for that same Polytechnic. So I think I deserve, my name is this, my email is this, I think I deserve the badge, here's my evidence. And and then somebody can decide, that's the default, someone decides whether that's sufficient evidence to issue the badge, and the badge is issued. And that's how we'll be issuing the badges from today's webinar. So one of the interesting things about it is that your badge application form becomes linked evidence in the badge. So if somebody is later investigating that badge, this is optional, by the way, it doesn't always have to be the case, but the idea is that you can show somebody the badge saying, IOPA gave me this badge, but you can also look inside and see what I did to earn that badge. So you see the direct evidence, and that can be useful for people. It can also be useful for the learner to realize what they knew 6 months ago. Good to remind yourself, and that's why I talk about them sometimes as learning capsules. So basically, you don't necessarily need a Moodle or a learning management system. Maybe you do want to have that if you're working at very high frequency, but it can also, this is can be quite an authentic way of basically engaging people, making them think, making them ask for a badge, and making them justify why they have the badge. That can really help what they call metacognition. Did people actually learn, and what did they learn? I also want to talk about endorsement. So you could have a badge that's not just, we say this badge is good, but these other people say this badge is good also. And they could even say that about us as an issuer for all the badges we issue, or maybe just this badge, which is particularly important, which might be the master credential badge for a particular green skill, for example. But it could also be a person has a badge and then is endorsed for what they did to earn the badge, is personally endorsed. So it's not just everybody gets the same endorsement. So I'll just show you some examples of that. This is one for the HPAS system, the humanitarian action one that works out of Save the Children. And Institut Bioforce, this is for an issuer endorsement. They basically aligned themselves to a quality standard. They developed an evidence package for that, and a third party looked at that, and it was actually Pearson, I think, Pearson Europe, looked at that and recommended to the steering committee that Bioforce would be accredited for, I believe it was 2 or 3 years, for the humanitarian learning standards based on the evidence they provided, and they did award that. So I would call this a semi-high stakes accreditation. Could also be, we have worked with this organization for 20 years. So it could be a partner you've worked with where you're supporting each other as peer organizations. Again, the formality can vary according to the need, what I like to call fitness for purpose. Here's one for an individual badge. So safeguarding vulnerable populations has been very important over the years. The problem is usually not so much about being a bad actor, but not knowing what to do about bad actors. So this program was put together by the Open University, and they developed a curriculum around it. So as you would expect, they actually endorse the badge itself. War Child Holland is kind of interesting because their focus is on children. So that basically for their candidates, they say you need this badge for safeguarding in general, and then you need 2 or 3 other badges that we have to be part of your induction, your onboarding for being a provider for us. Other organizations, maybe they liked it, maybe they also have something similar to War Child. I think one of those does, but others would just think this is good for the community. We endorse this. We like the way the program was put together, and maybe even we advised on it. So this is an example of my endorsements of the Open Recognition Ambassador badge that I have. And I've got 4 endorsements, including somebody from the UK, my old colleague Serge Ravet, a guy from the US, and another guy from France who we have collaborated with over the years. And you see down at the bottom on the left, you can link to my actual badge application where I basically give a little bio of what I've done to openly recognize. I want to go on now to the idea of alignment. So you can potentially make a link between your badge and a framework, or maybe a competency within the framework. So I've just included a couple here, for example. Let's say, and I think Andrew is talking about putting together your own framework, which could be adapted from some of these, could certainly be come out of the work that's already been done around the, I forget what that's called, PSS,
the people and skills standard.
Right, people and skills standard, exactly. So it could be around just general orientation and safety. It could be around specific, like a type of making or a specific machine or something like that. So just again, something, these can add value. They're optional. They can add value if they're relevant, and especially you can start comparing similar badges, talking about similar things, and compare the value of those. Yeah, there we go. So the other thing I wanted to show you is we've been talking about digital badges. Something that's fairly unique to, relatively unique to Open Badge Factory as a platform is that it began with badges, but there was more demand for having a paper version of it. So there's a paper version of the badge. So we call them PDF badges rather typically than certificates. So it's basically the default is the metadata of the badge, the content of the badge in order, maybe with a couple things missing if they don't seem relevant. You know, as you see here, so a multi-page thing, and hopefully the first page, as I show you here, the first page could be used standalone in a way. And then you would be able to link using a QR code or the link to validate the badge, the actual hosted version, the online version of the badge. So this I'm showing you is actually US letter. It could be A4, but it could also be a small sort of card that could be laminated, could again have that QR code and be something that people would have if connectivity is an issue for them. And a similar thing to that was when I was in Nairobi, I had a 2.5 hour safari on the way to the airport. It was just crazy. I don't know why I didn't spend more time there. And the driver was an actual accredited guide, and he had a little carnet with a QR code on it. And in that case, it just linked to the information that was on the card to confirm it. But it could be a link to an online hosted thing. So that, again, given a makerspace and probably laminators are fairly common, that's something you could consider. So this is sort of a custom version in, again, US letter format for how you can have that. So you could put that on your wall, for example, whatever. And again, you're able to do that. So out of the box, you can do this. And I believe we have the budget to come up with at least one design for a custom PDF badge. And I just want to spend some time talking about the badge portfolio. This is free for everyone. It's a default. I'm showing you the CanCred Passport version, but you would be Open Badge Passport. And I can sort of demo that depending on the amount of time we have. I can show you sort of the live version of this, but I'm just showing you quickly now how this goes. A lot of people, when they get badges, they immediately talk about sharing them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually not the greatest place to share badges because you have no power over how they're presented. They sort of go in order. You end up having to drill way down. And if you want to change the order, you have to delete badges and upload them again. It's very annoying to work with. So you could have best of both worlds by having a badge portfolio like this with multiple pages that show expertise, could be expertise in different green skills, for example, and then link back to LinkedIn. There's actually even slot under the contact info to say portfolio, and that could be a link to your badge portfolio. The other thing I would say is that you can explore other badges to issue once you're on Passport, and that's can be accelerated, and you can put yourself on OpenStreetMap. And the other thing is you could, and this is something we haven't really developed, there's an option for organizations to set up sort of learning communities on the Passport side. It's an added cost. I'm not sort of pushing hard on that right now, but you could be inviting people to engage in other pathways ongoing if you had the sufficient resources for that. Otherwise, there's a lot you can do for free out of the box just using Open Badge Passport. So this is your opportunity to earn a badge. So I mentioned that you are going to get a link to the presentation and a link to another presentation I'm going to dip into in a moment. But essentially, this is a way for us to learn what you learned today and for you to confirm what you learned today and be able to have that what I was talking about, the sort of learning capsule. So all this should work. I haven't actually run this design by Andrew yet. Hopefully, Andrew, that works for you as a first effort, and it fits with the sort of visual badge language that we have set up. So this is a participation. So it's a hexagonal thing, and it's not a milestone. And we have a sort of a keyword to say you didn't just participate; you actually reflected in a submission form. And maybe I'll just show you very quickly what that looks like. So I'm going to go to Creator Tools, go to Badge Applications, and I'll find another way to that. This is how I get to it when I'm logged in, but you would be able to see what I'm showing you very quickly. So there's the link. So this is the badge that you can earn. So this is for Workshop 1. If you come for Workshop 2, there will be another one for that, probably very similar. So a little bit about the IOPA and a little bit about the badge. So we basically imagine you're reading this badge and basically say who gave it to this person. Oh, okay, that's interesting. And how did they earn the badge? Well, this is organized learning, not assessed. So that's again that overall shape. These are the learning objectives. And Andrew, I'm open if you for adjusting these sort of draft outcomes or learning objectives. These links don't work yet. They will work after. And so there's the introduction deck that I've been sharing. If you like, Andrew, we can include the recording for this as well. And then we can also have this other deck that I'm going to be showing you as well. And then just an overview of what the content was, basically understanding that recognition goes beyond taking training courses. It's a 120-minute webinar session. was followed by an opportunity for reflection, so you'll be able to do that. So I've allowed you a quarter of an hour reflection for that. And then at the bottom, just a little bit about the green skills for Makerspaces, with a thank you to the organizations that made it possible. Andrew, this is based on, there's a picture of me at the podium on Nairobi, and there's this little sort of bar going across a podium that has the logos, and basically that order looking like that. So hopefully that works. And so that's what the badge is. And then if you keep scrolling down, you have the instructions for the badge earners. You would give your name, the way you would want to see it, say on a PDF form, and your email address, and make sure it's the right email address, because we're not able to check that. And then basically say what you learned. And we just, say as many words as you want, but the more you say, the more you learn, and the more we learn what you learned. And then how you can use what you learned. And again, just a paragraph is good, short paragraph, 2-3 sentences maybe. And then suggestions. So Dawn should talk more slowly, or Dawn's slides should be more simple, or I would love to hear more about a particular topic in a future webinar. We do this a lot for professional community of learning webinars in Canada. And then, privacy notice, I encourage you to read the privacy notice, but this is a GDPR, very GDPR compliant system. So it does respect privacy. And then you would just submit your application. And we will evaluate that application, might send it back saying, can you just tell us a little bit more? Or no, this is great, thank you. Here you go, and you will get the badge with the embedded link to your badge application and the links to the content in the system. Any questions about that before I jump over to that other deck? I'm just worried we're going to run out of time here.
Well, I want to emphasize what's just happened and what's about to happen, if I may. Whilst you think of your questions, anyone, please use the chat or the Q&A function, or raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. But what's just happened is that Don has introduced badges to you. He has shown the potential of badges, from formal to informal recognition, from participation or volunteer recognition, through to educational courses at universities, with some examples from Canada. You've shown how you can use badges that are endorsed by other organizations, or that are you have to collect a certain number before you get a qualification, or that have different levels that you can reach, or that are collaboratively designed by different people and organizations. There's an incredible array, and we are going to start over the next couple of days, the next workshop on Thursday in particular, the process of co-creating badges for green skills for Makerspace leaders. And then what's going to happen now is we're going to go through this process of how you actually create a badge. So that's all about badges and the potential of them, with some examples related to Makerspaces. We're now going to learn about how you actually create badges, and you've also just been asked to fill out that form so that you will receive a participation badge for the workshop today. If there's no questions, let's go back to Don. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to make this big again. This is a slightly different version of what I was just showing you. It was something I did for another purpose. Let me just go into presentation mode for that again. There we go. So these are the different types of badges you can have. If you want to have one, we also have templates that support this. So from the top on down, you have a certification that would be a robust summative assessment. So this is something typically you could have, it's not just the learning, it's the performance, it's the reliability. This person can be relied on to fulfill a role, for example. You could have assessed learning from the second from the top, summative assessment. and you can have direct evidence or demonstrated performance or application of learning. Those are those two that Andrew was focusing on. And then you could have, I was part of a workshop, I was part of a webinar, which I've sort of split out, but could be combined just as organized learning not assessed, and then flexible recognition at the bottom, which could be a number of things and a number of sort of levels of formality. But typically, if you're thanking somebody, you're not testing them before you thank them. So, and I just want to say, I'll flip back again to that platform where we'll end up working, but I just want to show you, sorry, where did my browser go? There we go. So if I go back, we have, I'll be going into more detail about this on Thursday, but I just wanted to show you briefly that this is the badge library where you would make things. And typically what we've done is we've made badge templates that reflect those different types of badges. And one of the things we offer people is the ability to just sort of copy that badge, the badge that's closest to what you want to do, name it, and then just type over it. So I'm just going to show you very briefly the one I just did. If I were to do that from scratch, I would say that is learning participation. So I would copy that. And the reason we provide these templates is to help people with the blank page syndrome. Okay, so title for test. So a short thing, and then the description here, there's an element of a description, and we give people some hints about what to do for that. Okay, a high level description, you're describing the achievement that's already been achieved. It's not like you're just copying over a course outline or something. And then the badge image, we can talk about the badge image. I think I want to talk about it a bit, so I'm going to leave myself some room for that. The badge image should reflect the content of the badge, also reflect the identity of the issuer. So in other words, when you open the badge, you're already anticipating what you're going to see if you've done a good job with it. The tags, I mentioned this, those are just sort of quick words. Expiration time, typically that's not a big deal. And for people, the alignments I've mentioned, I'll go into more detail about that, but it could be to EntreComp, it could be to Makerspace competency frameworks, it could be Makerspace leader competency frameworks that you would develop. And then down here, you end up having what I like to call the beating heart of the badge, which is the criteria. This is using something called Markdown, which is intended to be HTML for the rest of us. And it's just a way of marking up plain text so that it can be rendered as HTML. So if I go into preview mode down here at the bottom for this, you start seeing the headings showing up, you start seeing links, etc. And that's and you even start seeing images that have been put in there, lists and things like that. And so this is essentially, you would, when you're making a badge, if you want to use this method rather than starting from scratch, you could do that. You can just get rid of the scaffolding, replace what we've got with your actual things. And that's essentially what I did with the webinar badge. So if I go back up here and I go to our webinar badge, let's just save this first. Close. And I go back to the webinar badge. If I preview that, you see that we have a great image. We've got some tags. We're showing people this is something we provide. You can come up with your own recognition system if you wish, but this is the one out of the box. Organized learning not assessed, developing the objectives, something about the content, something about the experience. It's good. People often want to know about that. Was it assessed? No, but it's a reflective learner badge, so it's a signal, and that's good. And how big is it? How, granularity. And then if you want to provide some more context, this is something, for example, Andrew, if you have makerspaces that are issuing badges through your organization, this could be their little bio at the bottom to say that it looks like it's from IOPA, but this is a member of IOPA, and it could be a little story about them at the bottom. And let me just flip over. Again, we've got 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to flip over to what I was using to make this. So digital badges, you can spend a lot of time on the image. Images are important, but they're not sufficient. You have different shapes, and you can have a language built around different shapes. You can use icons in them. You can indicate levels. You can have banners and things like that. I have developed this language for it. So you'd have something that looks like a seal with multiple points here, and then something here that looks almost sketched to be sort of flexible. And then in between, I have what I think, my personal opinion, what I think is sort of increasing formality as you move from right to left. And then you could also have, I'm not sure if I have an example here, I have a stacked version of that where essentially I just make a quick pile of 3 of them, and that's sort of, you sort of see that it's a stack, even though it could be more than 3. And then symbols and things like that you could have, just indicating again what it is, the type of learning that it is, and then start playing with this. So for example here, I was talking about moving people from one platform to another. And what did I want to show you here? So this, for example, is a badge I issued to myself. You see my little signature there. So this is a self-assertion badge, and I took because I was a speaker at a certain conference in British Columbia, and so it's a so-called selfie badge, and I used their colors, and I basically did this, and I'm working on a very big canvas here. Let's see if I look at design. This is just one way of doing it. You can use Canva or any other. You could even use, professionals would end up doing something, so 16 by 9. Yeah, so that's, you would end up basically grouping all the elements here and then just save out as, save as picture. And basically the default is a PNG file, which is what you want. Has to be exactly square. That's another element I need to make sure that you guys know where to find in terms of design. Has to be exactly square, but the canvas, the background can be transparent. Ideally it would be. So you end up having a shape that's over a transparent square background. It has to be exactly square. And it has to be under a certain file size. I think it's 250K. And so typically I would upload something that's 500 pixels by 500 pixels, but would be based on a really big version that I might want to use for print purposes. So if I export this, it ends up being low thousands of pixels, and then I would reduce it in size to 500 pixels and upload that. But as I say, you can use Canva. The main thing I would say with Canva is the background should be transparent, and unless you pay for Canva, your background is always a color, typically white, and on the wrong kind of background, that ends up looking like postage stamps, which may not be what you're looking for. So PowerPoint or something similar like that can work. So that's essentially what I did. Was I took one of those examples and I started changing the colors, and I put that sort of image of Africa in the background, sort of semi-transparent, and IOPA here at the bottom, and that can be a starting point for coming up with other ones in the future that would not be the organized learning unassessed, but could be some of these other ones, and again in IOPA colors. And potentially, I guess you could have your own organization colors with a little IOPA logo on the bottom, sort of acknowledging the support from IOPA. So okay, so let me just quickly give you a preview of the badge canvas that we've got. Are we here? Not that one. Not that one. This one. No. Yeah. So there we go. So this is something that is going to be accessible via PowerPoint. And essentially what we're saying is we want you to we want you to sort of brainstorm what would be in a badge. So rather than going straight to the platform and playing around with it and dealing with that blank page syndrome or even copying a badge, just think about what do we want to recognize and why would we want to do that? So these questions that are based on sort of an entrepreneurial method of brainstorming are intended to help you do that. So as an issuer, who would be issuing the badge and why? So it could be your makerspace working with IOPA. And why is that important? Why is it important across Africa? Why is it important in your community? The earners, why would they earn the badge? What good does it do them? Is it just saying you did well, we see you? Or is it something that you can take and use to get into another, open up a new opportunity? And then if somebody's, that person shares the badge with someone, why would that person care what they're looking at? What is the story that you're telling? And what is it aligned to that's relevant to the person that's doing that? We often talk about badges as storytelling containers. You can make a verifiable claim that's based on a micro narrative to say this person has done this with laser cutting and why that's important. Or it could be, there was actually a great example in an event we ran last week with somebody formerly from SACWA who's developing a community of recyclers and basically garbage pickers in Pretoria, South Africa, and recognizing the skills that they're developing in terms of doing that. And I'm just thinking, Andrew, I should connect you to Navin because he had a senior position at SACWA, and this is his sort of retirement project, I guess, making this happen. He made a great appearance, and I'll give you a link to his recent presentation. So, type of recognition, is it based on assessment? Is it based on participation, etc.? This center column is mostly what people will see to begin with. What's the badge image? How is that meaningful? What's the high level mission of the badge? What does it say about the person in terms of learning or achievement? What did they have to do to earn it? And that's the story I'm trying to give you there. Over on the right, tags that might help describe it that aren't expressed elsewhere. Is there expiration? Is there an alignment? Who would say this is a good badge or that you're a good issuer? And then could you have multiple languages? And I don't think I have time to show you that. I can show you that next time, where basically the badge can open up in one language, and then you can just choose the other language to see all those fields in a different language. It's up to you to make those translations, but there's actually also a way where you can have you can only have one badge image, but you can have actually a animated PNG file that sort of goes from one language to another, if that's of interest. Okay, so that's ultimately what the product is going to be, but we have some pages for you to develop it. So early brainstorming notes that you might want to be working with here. You just sort of type in here to do that. And then this would be, once you've made the badge, why you just analyze it a bit. So do a little sort of reality check. Who should be involved? Who should be involved in your organization? Are there other stakeholders you should be reaching out to? What would the roles be of the various people? Who should design the badge or design the content of the badge? Who should be issuing the badge? And what characteristics do you want from that? Are you just doing this yourself? I mentioned already other players. Why should it work? Why would it work? Why would it not work? Why won't it work? And how can you get around some of those barriers that would stop it from working? In a perfect world, what are the benefits and how can you help make those happen? And then beyond that, I would just have, these are elements you can do. There's a picture of us doing a sort of tabletop version of this in Nairobi. I think you recognize at least one person in that picture. And people were working on, I think it was A1 sized versions of this. and happy to make those available if you wanted to print out locally and work on it for your own brainstorming purposes. But what we did was make this presentation, this sort of online version of it, that you could do it virtually as well. So that we're going to be going into more detail about this next time, but you'll be able to download these if you apply for the badge after today. You'll at least be able to download the current versions of these files, which we may update as we move on, and you'd be able to set them up. Just another thing to show you here. Here is just some visualizations of learning pathways if you're interested in that, or just different types of badges you would have. And the idea here is you would say copy the slide and then maybe rename the little objects and just mock up a pathway before you commit yourself to writing up each individual badge. Okay, so I think I've run out of time here. We should probably wind things up. Stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Don. That's fantastic. So what Don has done today is introduce badges to us and shown us how to how they can be used, even how digital badges can become paper badges and verifiable paper badges, how they can be integrated effectively with profiles on LinkedIn and so on. So the process now is that we are going to work with the free version of PowerPoint in the browser. It's open for anyone to use for free, just like Google Slides. And we're going to use those canvases to help come up with some ideas. And then we're going to be using some of the platforms that Don demonstrated to us to actually make the badges. So we're going to start doing that in the next workshop. And then after the workshop, for people who want to continue this work, we'll be able to finalize the badges and start issuing some of the badges. Don, do you want to share the link for the form in the chat today, or we do that next time?
Oh, that's a good idea. Actually, I'm sharing again, but maybe what I'll do is drop that in the link as well.
Okay, so this is in order to receive your badge for participation in today's workshop, and we'll use that as part of the awards that I'm about to describe. Can I and whilst Don's got the slide there, you can use that QR code as well if you like FabLab Winam. If you're watching on a screen as a group, you could take a photo of that QR code now, and you'll be able to fill in the form and get your badge issued. Okay, I'm going to interrupt your screen sharing, Don, and switch to my last slides. Whilst he shares the link in the chat.
Yeah, I'm having trouble sharing the link in the chat. I don't seem to be able. Oh, do I need to join it again? Let me just see.
Okay, that'll come through in a moment. I think we're just dealing with some of the settings in Microsoft Teams. Now, could everybody see my slide? The main slide again. Great. Okay. I want you to think about, after today, which green skills would you like to recognize? So think about activities that have taken place in your makerspace, and think about which of those you would like to have recognized. So have you done something on plastic recycling? Have you done something on eco buildings? Have you done something on e-waste or permaculture? On something on solar panels or reusing batteries? Have a think about which green skills, and then start thinking about what you could issue badges for that has happened in the past, that you're actively working on at the moment, or things that you could be doing in the future. then I want to quickly tell you about the awards. As part of this project, we have small £500 awards to compensate Makerspaces for their time and effort in adopting the badges. We only have 4 awards available, but I would I'll see if it was something we can do about that. It will be based on an application, a short form, so it's a little part of what Don has sent you will be part of it. That shows your participation, and then there'll be an application. It'll be paid to Makerspaces, not to individuals. If your Makerspace doesn't have a bank account, after you've applied, we can just try and understand that and how to deal with that by you and I keeping in touch. And an important requirement of this is that you have to attend both parts. So part 1 is today, which is learning about digital badges and how to create them, and part 2 is actually how we do it. Now, tomorrow, we have an optional drop-in session where Catherine and I will be using things like the badge canvas in PowerPoint to begin to get a sense of what kind of things could be created. If you want to attend that, you have to register separately, and I'll share this link after the meeting, but you have to register separately for it. Please use that QR code now. Please use that link now, and we'll deal with that. We'll meet again and deal with the PowerPoint sharing and things tomorrow. And then part 2 of this workshop is on Thursday, the same time, with a 1-hour break in the middle. And you should have all received calendar invitations for that separately from the calendar invitation you received today. If you haven't received your calendar invitation for Thursday by the end of today, then please get in touch with me. My contact details are on the registration page, but also at the end of this presentation. On Thursday morning, I want to make a plug for the community call of the Africa Makerspaces or Makerspaces Africa community. And we've already shared the WhatsApp group in the chat for this meeting. Joseph, if you could share the link to that meeting, it will also be shared in the WhatsApp group. And the speaker this month is Hugh Aubin from the Climate Change Lab in France, and he has been working with Francophone Fab Labs across West Africa in particular on climate change solutions, but also on developing out the makerspaces themselves. So here's my email address. If you want to find out more about Catherine, Don and I and some of the other partners involved in this project, you can look at the registration page for this workshop. Our email addresses are on there. Our LinkedIn contacts and websites are all on that page, so you should be able to reach out and connect to us. And I just want to end by particularly thanking Don today and thanking all of you for your attention, and we're looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible on Thursday. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Bye for now. Bye-bye.